Army, are you ready? Welcome to K-pop chemistry. No warning, no script, and definitely no way to stop it once it started. Right in the middle of the Tokyo Dome performance, Kim Taehyung suddenly did something that completely broke the flow. And for a split second, everything froze. Then Jungkook reacted. Not like it was planned, but like he felt it coming. The crowd didn't just cheer. They screamed. Loud enough to drown out the music. Loud enough to make even the members look around like something unexpected had just happened. But here's the strange part. Cameras caught it, but not clearly. Fans replayed it, but no one agrees on what they actually saw. Because in those few chaotic seconds, something changed. And it wasn't just the performance. So, what really happened on that stage that made an entire stadium lose control? Watch closely. This moment is easier to miss than you think. The second it happened, the performance didn't stop, but it didn't feel the same either. The music kept playing, the choreography moved forward, and the lights continued to flash in perfect timing. Yet, something underneath all of it had shifted. It was subtle, almost invisible, but impossible to ignore once you noticed it. Taehyung didn't rush to fix it. That's what made it stand out. Instead of snapping back into formation immediately, he let the moment breathe just for a fraction longer than expected. His movements were still smooth, still controlled, but there was a delay, like he was choosing when to return, not being pulled back by the routine. And Jungkook, he didn't look away. Even as his body stayed in sync with the choreography, his focus didn't fully leave Taehyung. It was split. Half on the performance, half on something that had just unfolded between them. Then came the next transition. A fast one, the kind that usually erases any small mistake or unexpected moment. But this time it didn't, because right as the formation shifted, Jungkook adjusted slightly. Almost unnoticeable, he placed himself closer than he was supposed to be. Not enough to break the formation, not enough to get called out, but enough to change the spacing, enough to change the dynamic. The crowd reacted instantly, even if they didn't understand why. The noise spiked again, louder, sharper, more chaotic than before. Some fans thought it was part of the show. Others started pointing, trying to catch what their eyes had just barely registered. Taehyung turned just a little. Not fully, not dramatically, but enough to acknowledge it. And for a split second, they locked into the same timing. Not the choreographed timing everyone rehearsed, but something else. Something that didn't need counts or cues. Then the beat dropped hard. Lights exploded across the stage, and the entire stadium was pulled back into the performance. It should have swallowed the moment completely, but it didn't, because even as everything intensified, there were small cracks, tiny details that didn't line up perfectly anymore. A half-second delay here, a glance held a little too long there. Things only visible if you were really watching. As the song built toward its peak, Taehyung's energy shifted again. He leaned into the performance harder, sharper, like he was trying to regain full control of the stage. Every move hit clean, every expression was back in place. Perfect. Too perfect. Jungkook matched him, but there was still that edge, that slight unpredictability in the way he moved. Not offbeat, not wrong, just different. And then came the moment no one expected. Right before the final chorus, when the formation tightened and everyone snapped into position, there was a brief opening, a space created by the choreography itself. It was supposed to pass quickly, but Taehyung stepped into it first. Jungkook followed again. Not part of the plan. For a heartbeat, they were closer than they had been all performance, standing in a position that wasn't meant to hold two people at once. The crowd lost it. Screams erupted so loudly they almost overpowered the track. Even from the far sections you could feel the shift, like thousands of people reacting at the exact same second to something they couldn't fully explain. And then they stopped. Not the performance, just that moment. Both of them froze for the tiniest fraction of time, like they hit an invisible line neither of them expected to reach. Taehyung's expression flickered. Jungkook's too. And then just as quickly they pulled back, snapped into their correct positions, hit the next move flawlessly, and continued like nothing had happened. The chorus exploded, the choreography reached its peak, and the performance carried on with full force. Perfect, powerful, untouchable. But the damage was already done, because now the crowd wasn't just watching the performance anymore. They were watching them. Every step, every glance, every space between them, trying to catch it again, trying to understand what they had just seen. And here's where it gets even stranger. If you go back and watch the full stage cam, there's one detail that doesn't match the rest of the performance. Right after they separate and return to formation, there's a brief moment, barely a second, where Jungkook turns his head, not toward the center, not toward the audience, but slightly to the side, right where Taehyung had been, like he was checking something, or someone. And Taehyung, he doesn't turn back. He keeps facing forward, perfectly composed, completely back in control, but his hand for just a split second doesn't follow the choreography exactly. Pause is just enough to make you question it. Just enough to make you wonder if that chaotic moment wasn't as accidental as it seemed. The final chorus hit like it was supposed to end everything. Loud, explosive, perfectly timed. From the audience's perspective, it looked like the performance had fully recovered. Every member was back in position, every movement sharp, every note exactly where it should be. The chaos from earlier seemed buried under the intensity of the stage. But if you watched closely, it never really went away. Because right after that brief pause in Taehyung's hand, the one that didn't match the choreography, something else followed. A pattern small at first, almost impossible to notice unless you were looking for it. Every time the formation shifted, Taehyung and Jungkook ended up slightly closer than before. Not enough to break anything, not enough to stand out to casual viewers, but enough to feel intentional, like invisible lines were being redrawn in real time. Jungkook adjusted his spacing again during a fast transition, half a step to the left instead of right. It looked natural, clean, professional, but it wasn't where he was supposed to be. And somehow, Taehyung matched it without even looking. That's what made it unsettling. There was no signal, no obvious glance to confirm the change. And yet they stayed in sync, not just with the music but with each other. The crowd started reacting differently now. The screams weren't just bursts of excitement anymore. They were uneven, anticipatory, like thousands of people were waiting for something to happen again, even if they didn't know what. And then it almost did. Near the end of the stage, there's a formation where everyone spreads out, creating space and isolating each member under separate lights. It's designed to break connections, to highlight individuals before the final closing sequence. This time it didn't fully separate them because as the lights dropped into place, one spotlight landed slightly off, just enough that the edge of Taehyung's light overlapped with Jungkook's. A technical detail, probably nothing, except neither of them moved to correct it. Taehyung stayed exactly where he was. Jungkook didn't shift away. For a few seconds they stood there, half in their own light, half in each other's, creating a visual that wasn't part of the original design. And the audience noticed. The noise rose again, but this time it wasn't explosive. It was sustained, like a collective realization spreading through the stadium. Then the music softened just for a moment, a brief instrumental break before the final ending pose. And in that quieter second, when the choreography slowed and the energy dipped just enough to expose anything hidden, Taehyung turned his head. Not fully, just enough. Jungkook didn't hesitate this time. He looked back immediately. No delay, no uncertainty, like he had been waiting for that exact moment. Their eyes met and held. Not for long, but longer than any choreographed glance would allow. Long enough that it couldn't be dismissed as coincidence. Long enough that even the farthest sections of the crowd reacted. Screams rising again, louder than before, sharper, almost disbelieving. And then the final beat hit hard. They broke eye contact instantly, snapping into the ending formation with perfect precision. The last move landed, the music cut, and the entire stadium erupted into chaos once more. From the outside it looked flawless, a powerful ending to a high-energy performance. Nothing out of place, nothing to question. But the cameras didn't cut immediately. There's a brief window, just a few seconds after the final pose, where everything is supposed to hold. No movement, just stillness before the lights fade. In that window something shifted again. Taehyung exhaled. You can see it in the rise and fall of his shoulders. Subtle, controlled, but real. Jungkook moved first. Not a step, not a turn, just his hand. But it relaxed out of position a fraction earlier than it should have. And for the shortest moment their sides brushed. Accidental, maybe unavoidable given the tight formation. But here's what doesn't add up. Neither of them pulled away immediately. It lasted less than a second, too fast for most to notice, too small to prove anything, but enough. Enough that when the lights finally dropped and they broke formation, the energy between them didn't feel unresolved anymore. It felt acknowledged. And that's what left everyone confused. Because if that chaos really had no meaning, if it was just a random, unscripted moment that spiraled out of control, then why did everything after it feel so connected? Why did every movement, every glance, every position seem to lead right back to the same place? And the strangest part of all, right as they turn to leave the stage, there's one last angle from a distant camera. Blurry, shaky, easy to ignore. But if you zoom in just before Taehyung steps off, he slows down. Not because he has to, but like he's waiting. And a second later, Jungkook reaches that exact spot. Perfect timing. No hesitation and no confusion, like it was always meant to end there. Together, or at least as close as they could get without anyone asking why. Off stage, everything should have reset. The music was gone. The lights no longer dictated where to stand, where to look, or how long to hold a moment. Staff voices filled the space again, guiding movements, calling names, keeping everything on schedule. It was supposed to be simple: walk off, breathe, move on. But something didn't reset. Taehyung was the first to step into the corridor beyond the stage exit, the same narrow path most artists take without thinking. His pace was steady, his expression calm, nothing out of place for anyone watching casually. Except he didn't go all the way through. Halfway down he slowed. Not enough to stop, just enough to create a pause in the flow. Behind him footsteps echoed, staff members' movement blending into one continuous stream. And then just a second later, Jungkook appeared at the entrance of that same corridor. He could have walked past. He could have kept the pace, followed the others, and disappeared into the routine like nothing unusual had happened. But he didn't. He adjusted again. The same subtle shift from the stage, barely noticeable but deliberate. His steps slowed just slightly, matching a rhythm that wasn't being set by anyone else. For a few seconds they moved like that, separated by a small distance, connected by timing that no one around them seemed to notice, or if they did, they didn't react. It was too quiet, too controlled, too easy to dismiss as coincidence. Then something changed. A staff member crossed between them, momentarily breaking the line of sight. It lasted less than a second, just long enough to interrupt whatever invisible thread had been holding their timing together. When the path cleared, Taehyung had stopped fully this time. Not in the middle of the walkway, not blocking anyone, just slightly off to the side, like he was waiting for something that hadn't arrived yet. Jungkook closed the distance. No hesitation now, no careful pacing. Just a direct step forward that erased the space between them completely. For the first time since the stage, they were close enough that there was no choreography to justify it, no formation to explain it, and no performance to hide behind. Just silence. Taehyung turned his head slightly, not fully facing him, but enough to acknowledge that he was there. Jungkook didn't look away. He didn't need to. Whatever had started on that stage, carried through every glance, every adjustment, every perfectly imperfect moment, had followed them here. And now there was nothing left to interrupt it. Taehyung said something low, quick, almost like it wasn't meant to be heard by anyone else. Jungkook's reaction was immediate, but not loud or dramatic, just a small shift in expression, like something clicked into place, like something made sense for a brief second. Neither of them moved. The hallway noise continued around them. Staff walking, voices calling, doors opening and closing. But in that small space between them, everything felt still. Then footsteps approached, closer this time, too close to ignore. Taehyung stepped back first. Not abruptly or awkwardly, just enough to create distance again. Jungkook followed a half-second later, the timing almost identical to the way they had separated on stage. Natural, controlled, invisible to anyone who wasn't looking for it. They resumed walking side by side at first, then gradually shifted back into the expected spacing as they moved deeper into the backstage area. It should have ended there. Just another moment swallowed by the pace of a live show. But it didn't, because later, much later, when most people thought everything was over, another detail surfaced. Not from a video, not from a clear angle, but from someone who had been there. A staff account, short, vague, easy to overlook. It didn't describe everything, just one thing. They mentioned that after leaving the main corridor, there was a brief delay before Taehyung entered the dressing room. Only a few seconds. Nothing unusual on paper. Except Jungkook wasn't with the group at that exact moment either. No footage confirmed it, and no clear evidence showed what happened in that gap. Just a missing few seconds unaccounted for. And somehow those few seconds became the most talked about part of the entire night. Because if everything we saw on stage, in the hallway, in those almost moments that never fully revealed themselves, was just coincidence, then why do those missing seconds, the only part no one captured, feel like they might have been the most important of all?